Chili crickets. Obstinate chili crickets. It's not going to come in out of the cold, are you? You're going to be resistant to the very end. I hope you have good jumping legs by then. Or you're just sitting there squeaking your legs along, thinking it's nice and comfortable for you not to respond as the boot's coming down. You better have some really good jumping legs. But by then, you may not be able to do anything because there's another boot. And there's maybe a whole gang of boots coming down on you. I don't know what else I can say. I just keep sitting here. All the run up in the broadcast right up to there, and I said, there's really nothing more for me to say. I could just stop. No one will listen. Anybody who has listened has picked it up and going to have to figure it out. Seems like I don't really add much, although I do know I do. I do know there are some people listening, and they're slowly getting it and doing their thing. And I hear the voices, the voice that was never out there before, being spoken not through me, but through everyone who is listening. Their vocabulary is statement. They're coming up with the examples that I have in different words. It's very fascinating to listen to. And in a way, I just smile to myself, saying, "Look at those words were not being strung together before. Those analogies were not being made before I actually started speaking of them. Whether or not I'm the source or not is really not what I'm saying. I'm saying that there's now, slowly over time, so many years, what nobody ever talked about in the way, at least I have been trying to expose it, was talked about. What a few of us in the broadcasting realm have been talking about, working together in unison as a voice consistent around. Not everybody, for sure. Very few, actually. Has slowly been seeping into the cricket mind. I can see it. We just can't get you off of making that nice little sound that makes everybody think everything's okay. Such a quiet, peaceful night that it is. Cold as it's been all of a sudden. You're still going to be, you're warming up your little feeties, doing that little sound that you get to do. I don't get it though. I don't know what these people are such genius. They figured out how to come in underneath your sense of awareness. It's really interesting to watch, and it's not just I'm susceptible too. I took more important, I think, than most people, that the Protocols of the Elders of Zion was really a partial manual of our human frailty, working on our fallen nature. And I took that as being literal, that part. I certainly didn't glom on to whatever else everybody uses as an excuse to dismiss it or make an argument out of it all. I guess I use information a whole lot different now. As I told you, the news is notice. It's telling me something. Even the so-called fake news is telling you something. I look at some of the Twitter line and some of the discussions. The discussion around it is just feeding the point. And I don't even know what the question. I asked the other day, why is some of this stuff a question? Why is that the CIA is lying a question? They've told us they were going to lie. This was done a decade ago or so, at least. And yet we sit and we make up fairy tales in our mind because we're being told fairy tales. And I mean, just being nice and neutral. I didn't want to think real hard about. You see the so-called fake news. It's just a bunch of fairy tales. The problem is there's real stuff in there that you need to listen to. For all of y'all that don't like the word stuff, I know I maybe say it too much, but there it is. Stuff. There's a lot in there that we need to know about. And the stuff, all those things that I extract for myself, that I apply and I help others to apply, that I work with. Again, attaching the law that sits underneath that destroys this legality. The chasm between politics and land, and the politics between the chasm between politics and real life, not the undead, is very clear to distinguish. Certainly through my studies, certainly without opinion, without the broken links of the chain that I've heard going on through so many decades now, of people just trying to figure out what they're up against. And so we invent things to try and explain what it is instead of just going right after it and say, okay, what do we have here? Let's drop what we think was going on and reanalyze, repent is what that word is, rethink What am I really sitting in? And so, if you don't really do that, and you think you have it all figured out, you're one of those two. You're the pretender, the clueless either, or you're part of the problem. You actually want to see it work that way. And I was just talking to a couple people that people don't believe that a grand conspiracy can be working in front of you, and you'll know. How can a grand conspiracy happen without anybody noticing? And my comment was, well, it can, and you're living it. And we sued part of it in 2013. And so I have the eyes to see how a conspiracy, I'm saying that in the neutral now, I'm not putting it as an illegal conspiracy. There's a couple people working together on a project. A conspiracy doesn't have to be an unlawful or illegal, where you get to do some harm to somebody without ramification, or the lawful, where your actions are completely impure, pure and not harmful. These distinctions are there, and until you break that down, you're going to be one that's, like I said, the clueless, a pretender, or the one who supports the oppression against everybody else. And that's what I come here to try and offer all the time. And since I don't really get too much feedback about that, I have no gauge but my own critique of my own work on whether that's working. And then that little ear I get to hear, because I don't get to see much behind Woodshed, but I get to hear in the audio part the people speaking. They're reflecting the concepts, whether they want to agree with me, whether they've denied what I've said, whether they can't prove it or not. The more proper discussions coming out. And so that kind of encourages me. It's certainly slower moving than molasses or sugar up in Kannukistan, but molasses in the south when this old cold air is going to hit us this year. But there it is. It is moving. So I have to take a little bit of wherever I can take a support for myself, because I don't see many people grabbing it for themselves. I'm just got to let you know that I listen to the world a little different. I don't know if it's any more better. I'm just that's how I filter this stuff through my little pea brain. I'm hearing the vocabulary changing over time. It's starting to be more correct in its view, but I already know. It's like anybody I talk to. I understand what you're saying. Those that don't fight me, those that actually have been doing their own research and actually got they're in the general correct direction, at least the way I can see our objective basis to follow is. They say, I see what you're saying. I completely believe what you say. You've pointed out the proof to me, so I can't refute that. But boy, to be able to restate it that way, I just don't know. And I have to admit that that's been a universal problem. But my answer universally is, you need to read more. You need to really read what I suggest you need to go read. You need to look for those things I'm pointing out. And when you do your own, normally it does. An inspiration comes over you to maybe not go down the track I was kind of leading you, but you say, hey, I got this little thing over here I want to understand. This part was interesting, but I see there's something right here that's even got me more. And you go down and you start blazing your own trail. And then you, as I tell you, you go down that path, you find what you want, how it proves to you, and you come back and I ask you to tell me, and a lot of times you will. In fact, we'll work it out. A lot of people that work with me, they come back and they say what they found, and I say, okay, did you notice this and this and this? And so I have something more to contribute. That again, it's like going into an area and it's new to you, you'll only see certain things. Well, I've been in that area usually, and I've seen a few more things, so I can contribute that, and that builds upon your knowledge when you work with people together. But it's not just taking it because anybody says it, it's because you're working on the proof. And I don't mean in a loose proof, I mean right down to the bottom foundation of wherever you're starting. And always remember that you may be researching out, as I have, but always never to forget, when I did the legal research, I remembered and maintained the knowledge and the foundation and the orientation that it was legal. It is a contained thing to study that does affect our lives. And you have to maintain that containment in your thoughts, as I tell you the categories and possibilities thing. And you have to contain that there, and don't let the jurisdictional containment bleed out to other things. And once everyone settles down and stops making the fairy tale in their mind about what they think is going on in the world, and really start to look at some of these things that are in the legal statements that tell us the condition that state exists in, you're not going to have a clue on what status you would take. You can use the words, you won't know why. And this is, I think, makes the distinction between myself and about anybody else. There's very few people I will speak with that really can maintain this thing, and it's not. I don't want to sound superior to anybody. It's just what's required. And when we get down into rolling up our sleeves and really working this, not talking about it, but really having to deal with a real problem. There's someone trying to hurt somebody, and we have to. And I've learned you have to find an objective basis that those that are hurting you have to see, and those that are witnessing, looking into this, have to find that objective basis. If you come from opinion, you're not going to get it. You come from the written black and white, now you're going to start to go somewhere. And it's not so simple. Just because you point that out doesn't mean you win, because I told you, you're infiltrated and surrounded. You're in a prison, folks. It's just you're surrounded by all the system. You're surrounded by the infrastructure of the system, the guards, the rules, and all that. And you have to learn how to do this anyway. And once you put your mind in that state, I think you start to really appreciate what I'm telling you more. That there's these rules and things, whether or not they're actually recognized immediately, when it is something that another jurisdiction isn't supposed to do. And you understand that focus, that you put the heat of the thousand suns on that point, that you have a much greater position to burn that out in them than to deny it and make up your fairy tale in your mind. And so, like I said, I start a whole bunch of things to talk about. I'm so far off of it already. Just what comes in my mind. It's amazing what happens right before the broadcast. We're sitting here, I don't know if you appreciate well, for me anyway, maybe everyone else has got it so kicked down, it's all laid back, but for as long as I've been doing this, every time I go to the broadcast, you're looking, there's things that can break, there's stop working, things that don't hook up quite right, and so you're on edge. By the time I'm through looking at my on edge, I come into you and talk, and I got another thought in my brain, how fast it all starts to work. But and as I say that, for those of you on Prodcast, we're trying to prod you into action, folks, because that's what it's going to take. And I can tell you, it doesn't take a lot of knowledge. Once you start applying it, really, you don't have to know the world. You just have to know the truth. There is a truth in a condition, and there's the facts of that, and you can rely on that pretty good. And then there's the objective basis to apply to that. And all I've just explained to you is what a court's supposed to do. Court sitting neutral is supposed to do in your life when you have an issue. But today the podcast number would be BTWRLM193, I think. Boy, I hope I'm right on these things. So much going on. Also, I hope you all made it through this week. I don't know about for you. It was a real bear for me. And so we'll keep plugging away. Anyway, and then along some of the lines of what I was working with some of the bearishness that went on, I wanted to do we'll call it the PSA that's on this little document here. For those of you geeks out there and hardware savvy people, for the keeping everybody online, or have to work through yourself through a wireless router system, that the router is a public router that you don't know. Understand here's several Netgear routers have an easily exploitable security vulnerability. Here's how to test is the article. I won't go through it. It's on Lifehacker. Just wanted you to know about it when you're going into either you have these are pretty high-tech looking routers. They might not be what everybody has, but you don't know whose wireless you're using. There's apparently an easily exploitable problem with them that you want to know about. If you know anybody that has a wireless, you can ask them about this, and if you feel you want to find out for yourself, you have these Netgear routers. It'd be important for you to find out, so that again, another level of awareness in this battlefield we live in, and where people can exploit you. Now, even if it's not the government, there's just people that are no good, and they just want at your stuff, and they want to, if nothing else, you just want to be a nuisance to everybody and mess your stuff up, and anymore that could be pretty expensive. So I'm kind of into that. Into making sure that we at least are aware that keep the memory of this vulnerability always, digital vulnerability. It just reminds me, I don't know about you, but it reminds me of Silent Weapons, Quiet Wars. Just this digital world, for as fantastic as it can be, and for all the advantage we can see it can be done, it is really the gaping security hole itself. The existence of it is a gaping security hole in your life. And this is the technocrats coming to bring this in your life. And if you don't really stop and think about that, continue to take on all the things, the gifts they'll give us, everything that's free. Folks, I don't know what to tell you coming in the future. I really don't. I say that I'm just getting, I guess my mind's getting, for myself, I'm getting more and more detached, I sense. I'm not unattached, I'm not uninterested, I'm not still in the fight, but I'm realizing, like I tell you, I don't have a future in progeny here. I don't even really know what I'm talking about to tell you all that won't listen, or won't listen fast enough, or won't take up the gauntlet that you need to take up. Because once I'm out of here, I can't tell you where we're going. Hopefully it'll go be in the correct place, in the right dimension, whatever it is, whatever they call that place. But I can't know. And if it's nothing, then it's nothing. And then you're here to suffer with it. And suffer means you continue it. And that's probably the saddest thing I can think for all y'all. And as I've had to suffer it because I can't stop some of it, I understand what that is. And this is almost like a purgatory. We're not getting too off on the tangent, but so at any rate, Netgear routers, newer ones it looks like, and I don't know, I didn't look too deep, I just wanted you to know, the wireless units that you use may be vulnerable, and then your stuff gets hacked or whatever they do to your system, and now you've got a bunch of time and trouble and exasperation in your life, if not worse, like going into your accounts and this and that and the other. And another side issue, I found a colleague of mine had to get, because his computer broke, he had to get another laptop. It had Windows 10 on it. Just a note of FYI for y'all. If you also had, I don't know, I think it was something like Outlook 365 or something like that. If all of a sudden you got an update and you lost connection to the internet, that Windows literally firewalled you out of the internet because you didn't upgrade your Office products, that might be why you can't get on the internet. So the technician that looked over that computer had 23 other units just like it that he didn't understand what was going on. The reason why he could find it with my colleague's computer was because my colleague had just gotten his machine. He didn't have a whole lot. He wasn't tied onto many things, and so his machine was a lot cleaner, and they were able to find out that Windows has a sub-file. It's like you on an Android system with Windows 10. You are not root. The Windows company, Microsoft, is the root of your system. They own you. Now, I don't know about you, but that's not appealing to me. And so, again, as we move into this world and life, we don't understand the technology. We don't understand, just like you got a place to plug in, like I've been telling you. You sit in the soft place they put you. Windows 10 does everything for you. And you're sitting in the seat they provide, and they got the electrodes on that seat. They got the control of where that seat's going to be, how it's going to work, where you're going to see from that seat, what you're going to do from that seat. And you didn't think about that. It's because that's how we are. We're literally little children in the world, and they're taking advantage of it. And that would be a good thing, even the children, because at least you still have a chance to be a man or a woman. But what they got you is these little animals. And I keep telling you that. I keep pointing you to the statutes to read for yourself. And you're not even that, folks. You're a pest animal. And you're worse in the ranking. You're worse than the pest insect, you adults. Now, all of you that don't really understand that and believe me, you're missing it. You're going to miss it, and you're going to make fairy tales in your mind. And what I'm asking you to do is understand that's the perspective you have to think of from when you're dealing with what you're dealing with. And it's a mind bender. I'm telling you, every time you do this enough, I've done it like maybe a dozen times now. When you get a mass of new information, your mind literally feels like it's flipping around. All of a sudden, it's like your mind literally feels like it's rolling in your head. You study on a certain subject matter, and all of a sudden a realization happens, and it's like your whole mind feels like it's trying to get oriented to the new gravity. It's quite interesting. Okay, a lot of you call me nuts. That's all right. When it happens to you, you'll know you've been doing enough. If it doesn't happen to you, I don't know. I can't explain it to you. I can just tell you that I'll sound like a crazy man forever. If that's where we go. But you continue to make fairy tales. You continue to go down the tracks that you make up in your mind without finding out where you're at in the prison, and you will be dealt with, or you will get nothing done. Listen, let me put it to you. This just struck me to tell you this way. You know we have freedom of speech. And so they don't stop that when you go into a prison. You have freedom of speech. And I've told you what they'll do. If you speak too long and too loud, they'll stick you in a smaller room and let you speak and scream your lungs out. Beat your head against the wall. That's a freedom of speech too. That's a freedom of expression. Beat your head against the wall. They don't care. That room's all laid out. They just hose it down. Hurt yourself. You can speak as long as you want. You can talk all you want, but you ain't getting out of that prison. Not that way. And so you have freedom of speech. You walk around, you think you're not in the open air prison. You have freedom of speech somewhat, unless you get in groups of bigger than 3 and they think that you're doing some terrorist act. Now you're all enemy combatants. But anyway, you haven't noticed that little lock on the cage and the new courtyard they put you in. That's okay. Everything's fine because you haven't figured that out yet. I hear this guy in this other pod screaming about how everyone else is all in prison, and I don't understand why he's not out of the prison, and so he has nothing to say that's proper. And then you don't realize that there's these layers and layers and layers of the Panopticon that we live in that eventually comes out to become the globe that we live in, the world that we're living on. And I looked at that when that realization came to me. I finally said, wow, we really got to figure this out a lot better. I've got to be in there, and there is a way through. The problem is it comes to a battle of sorts. It's always going to be that war. There's no way to stop that. And here's the point. It's not about the war. It's not about taking the war idea. It's that's the reality. That's the fact of where you live is in a war scenario. What drives me continuously is I don't choose that for myself. And I believe that you wouldn't choose it for yourself, and so I'm going to tell you we have a way through. It's not because I put myself in the war mentality. I'm in a war battlefield. I better come to terms with that. Doesn't mean that that's my spirit. That certainly does not mean that's my spirit. That's not going to be my action. That's not going to be my thought. It's a fact, a reality that is in play. And it's at different levels and different degrees, so some people don't understand it. And the less detached, the more that go with the flow and the stream don't even understand what I'm talking about, literally. And this is some of the debate you'll have with your own self about your family. Why does your family turn you out? It doesn't, because your family doesn't mean that it's an understanding. It's not natural. And you're all creature to the environment you've lived in. And so why wouldn't there be a problem? And then we have the creature comforts that we just want to get along. And that's where I'd like to be, folks. That's where my spirit is in all that, what we call free, not freedom. Again, I shouldn't have to say, but I'll say it here, I shouldn't have to say without harming someone else. Being free is not being peaceful if I'm going to be able to give a harm to somebody. So that has to come impliedly with the way I'm coming from this. So in this regard, I could start sounding like a lot of people that use words, a single word, to describe a fairy tale existence. That's not going to get us there. Talking about it, typing about it, telling you how much information that we all know about what's right, what's wrong, is not going to solve it. We have to take this knowledge and apply it. And I would tell you that's the fire, the rubber meeting the road. That's the fire in the pit, and you'll be purified in your knowledge pretty quick, whether or not you're right or wrong. And that's why most people don't take an action, because they know that. I think they know that instinctually. You know that you're going to go out and you're going to get thumped down, so you decide I'm not going to do anything. I went and got thumped down without knowing. I said, that's not right. What do I got to do to stop being thumped down? And I learned real quick, there's a process. No, it doesn't mean there's a guarantee, but there is a process. And it has come over decades now, realizing they've forced us, and we've always been there, but it seems like now they're just forcing us because the oppression is just so great worldwide. They've forced us to have to understand non-dependently. Thank you, Solomon, if you're listening, and I hope you're okay. Non-dependently, but because we're actually listening and understanding the facts and the reality and that truth, we then realize the actions we take, and we start working. It looks like we're acting unified together, but we're actually acting non-dependently, but on the same path. So that path gets overcrowded, but I'll tell you, that narrow path will fill everybody. Just like the area outside the path, the traverse, they'll drag you off into the weeds in the dark forest and beat you up in there, and no one will see it, like they do all the time. Just like that area is infinite, the narrow path that everyone takes will accomplish and accommodate everyone that wants to come to it and stay on it. And that's what I come here every week to try and identify to y'all. So in our digital world, we got problems, and we'll have to just pay attention. I just want people to know about the exploitable stuff. If you got Windows 10 and you had some products you've been buying, it's fascinating what they do there. You got to pay for these Windows products now, I guess, every year. You got to get now they tell you that the license is not free. Windows 10 was free, but all the products you get through there is not free. And apparently in this last update, when you didn't update your license, regardless of what you thought you had, whether or not it was you thought it was paid for a lifetime, their firewall trumped your firewall. And so you're sitting, they own you. I'll just tell you, they own you, and you better start to consider that. When you're owned, your stuff is owned. I don't even know why you're buying it, but let alone trying to think that you exist in a reality that's controllable by you is really, I really hope you don't hold that fairy tale too long. And I hope you don't resist what I'm trying to tell you, not what I say you should start to do for yourself. And after you start doing that, all the other things, whatever I say is wrong will be apparent. You won't even talk about it. Whatever I say is right, you'll say, oh, you'll be accelerating down the highway a lot quicker to the destination that you thought you were. As long as you resist what I'm telling you in the process of doing this, you will not get and not see the fruition of all your derision and all of your division and all of the defenses that you put up. Okay, I got 3 Ds. Okay, I mean, I don't know what else to say. I'm trying to explain this. I'm actually speaking kind of slow. I'm not even looking at my tabs now. I'm looking right at my keyboard. Doesn't spell any words to me. It's down there. It's another tool I got to use, and I got to use it correctly. Wow. I mean, the evidences of all the facts of the realities of life are around us, and I don't know why a bunch of intelligent people I held highly in my mind around me that I talk with and around, that we engage with on the internet really aren't coming to this reality and would take a different turn on it. And then just essentially that means you're throwing up your hands. Because for some reason, from my perspective, I've found that if you slow down and look at really what the condition is, as I've said before, you're railing against the corruption of a system, not necessarily that system. And that system was designed over at least thousands of years of our mistreatment of ourselves. And it didn't finish at the time the United States of America came. And so the reality, and if you doubt what I'm saying, or you don't, how do I prove that? Just look at what's going on today. We are not in our best day as people with each other, and I advisedly say people in deference to what Stefan, I don't know your name. I see it spelled Stefan, so if I'm making a problem, I apologize. He mentioned this word people. I've told you the same thing in different words, but this street language, I have a kind of a problem real time to speak to you in street language that you understand versus what the legal language would say. Remember, I've mentioned the whole people. The whole people are not you. Think about that. The whole people I found written on the top in stone, folks. This is chipped in marble on the face of a government building, a Capitol building. The whole people is not you. The whole people are the people that are in that building as the assembled rulers over you. And to remind you, something I've said long, long ago, is all this stuff has to come back up. Out on front, again, chipped in stone, if you don't understand the significance of these things, chipped into stone was this mural, bas-relief mural. And the statement underneath that mural is, the Star of Empire takes its way. Star of Empire takes its way. If you don't understand that that's a battle cry from some people, the rulers, that you're being used as fodder for, and that represents the whole people in that building, that's not you, you're missing it. And so I'm speaking a little bit to what Ron was talking about, adding a little bit more, actually what I've talked before, but it does come back out. You just look at the reality of things. When you find out that's the condition, you have a people, rulers that come by force. You're not coming in peace, notwithstanding their words of their sweet words to the contrary. You have to understand you're sitting in a war reality. If Doesn't mean that you take that on. It means that that's the thing you're up against, and that's going to be the determining factor on how outcomes, the reality, not what they determine as an outcome on the agenda side, but how the reality outcome does turn out, the resolution to the interaction. That I have come through experience to understand when I turn to that reality, I told you a long while back, your addressment of that changes completely. You're at odds with it because of its nature, but you don't come in the character of someone who's against it, and that is all the difference. That makes all the difference, and this is what I try to tell you, why it almost sounds like, you're trying to get along, to go along, no, or you're trying to use the system, no. If you go into Admiralty, for all y'all that want to wave that flag, you want to think you know so much about it. Oh, we're in Admiralty. Why don't you just learn about the defenses in Admiralty and stop whining about it? My opinion, and so that's what I looked at, and that's what I do. Even in Admiralty. Remember, prize is the captured goods and ships on the ocean and crew on the ocean. Booty is what the hip-hop booty, shake your booty. That's the same, or authority, the same Admiralty, but on the land. If you don't think that ships and ship law is on the land, that's what they call it when the admiral and the military jumps on the land as a navy. They call what they're taking booty. So go ahead and shake your booty. It's not you're not doing the shaking. They're talking about themselves shaking your booty, your stuff. And so there's a defense in Admiralty against that. Why don't you know it? I tell it to you periodically. And so I'm here to try and give you a rationale that helps us to move us along, because I don't know that I can do this all by myself. I really don't think so. I'm not. Maybe one guy can do so. Maybe one woman can do so. I've not seen the evidence of it actually. I see some inspirations. I see some major movements going on. I see change happening, real change. But then you find out that was all planned change. Like I reference it now to the stalking horse condition. You're used to fulfill someone else's agenda. And upon that, I got myself back to my tab. Let me get onto that now. In the what I thought I washed my hands of saga, to just tell you what you needed to do and move on, so that I got to cover some other information for other types of people, but it just seems to be this lingering thing right after the broadcast, and it was promoted as here the Indians are right, the Standing Rock Sioux are right, but I'm not going to dwell too much on this one today. I guess I can't wash my hands of it. I really want those people. I want all y'all to understand how you do it better in this war construct they have built. They have us around Battlefield America. I can't really let this part of it go. The pipeline spills 176,000 gallons of crude into the creek about 150 miles from the Dakota Access protest camp, was passed around, it seemed to me, maybe prejudicially on my part, as, see, we told you so. And the problem for me immediately was, well, yeah, these pipelines have breakages, and I've told you over the last few months, we have at least, like when Vince Easley told us about what the potential problems on those pipelines are. That was news to me. I didn't know about that. But I embraced it pretty quick. And I said, you can take that and use that in the process correctly instead of thumbing your nose at it, being so obstinate that everything's cool, and don't use the tools that they give you, and then shut up because you think you're sovereign or whatever. I'm too good for this. Well, you're still going to be treated like that prisoner, so you better rethink your position. That this went through, look at where the Indians are right, there's problems. And I looked at this story, and I want you really to look at this, and I'm not going to even read through it. I want to read through it, but there's so much more to say, and I want you need to invest your time, not in your mind. You need to invest your time in what there is, and then apply what I'm saying, and then go actually do it, and then you'll see what I'm talking about. That I looked through that story, and I said, wow, I wonder, a lot of people are looking at, well, I'm sure they're looking at it that here the pipeline broke again, put 76 gallons of oil into a creek. Well, it wasn't the creek crossing I noticed, first of all, but it doesn't matter. That's not my point. My point is to try and explain to you there's a process. And if you don't engage that process, you're likely to see all this in the future, and you're not going to be doing, even if you're truly water protectors and not the environmental water keepers underneath a stalking horse, a charade under a costume yourself, which you can prove if you're not, and you haven't. And so I sit here with one eye kind of closed here and the other eye kind of squinting. This story told me, if you go through it, gave me probably 5 new things to add that confirmed what I was telling you needed to be done in the process. Absolutely confirmed. It was evidence to me that there was facts that needed to be stated, that if you weren't so dang obstinate about all your sovereignty, you've been able to put this up front. And I want you to really go to the blogcaster when I get this posted, and I would like you to read this first story again. If you all thought you had it understood that the Indians were correct, yeah, there was a leak and it was 176,000. I'm not talking about that, so don't do that to me. Don't do that to yourself. Look in the story and see that they have a list of probably, I think it was 5 things that they could have been putting up front instead of standing obstinate and saying nothing, refusing to participate. Could have been put in on the front end of this. As I said last week, or the week before, I don't know what it is now, in discussing the communication in the Twitter. There's basic misunderstandings or lack of foundational understanding of what we do when there is this dynamic in this country over what the infrastructure has to be because we use it. Again, until we come up with a complementary system that's as simple and doesn't allow more profiteering. Everyone is all into this environmental thing and don't realize this carbon market coming on is going to be worse than any profit that the oil companies that you think are profiting, these transmission companies are making. And then it's centralized, worse than that. And it can't really respond to the demands, which is what they want, because if then they have the control of the monopoly, it's going to cost you more on top of that. You don't even see. We are so blind. Even in my lack of full understanding of the condition that there might be, I'm blind myself, but I see that much through my blindness. And at that point, I have to take a little bit of consolation that a one-eyed man is king in a world of blind people. But I'll tell you what, the one eye that's looking in me is a terror. It's a terrorism. And it just needs to stop. And we have the power to stop it. And it's not going to happen to be obstinate and not actually putting the right things forward. Or thinking you're putting the wrong things forward and having that not be the truth. Like I said last broadcast, I titled it, Things That Ain't So. Boy, we do that a ton. We do that a ton. It's killing us, folks. It's killing us, each one of us. It's killing our spirit. It's killing our ability to be who we really want. Even those of us that may have already given up. I see a lot of that as well. But I think that's just a point of inspiration. There's got to be a spark of inspiration. You won't even come close to knowing what I'm talking about. You'll fight me tooth and nail. You'll chastise me. You won't talk to me no more. Whatever. You'll avoid me. Whatever. You'll be nice with each other, but you won't really affect yourself as you need to. I say as you need to, as a demand, as a command, as an obligation and responsibility on you. I will put that on you. That's not something that I'm just haphazardly saying is just something we can divorce ourselves from. A war has been placed against us. If we don't recognize that, and we don't have a spirit in us to fight that, it'll consume us. It'll use us more than war. It'll be war. It enslaves us is what it does. And that's probably maybe for me the saddest thing. So moving over, there's 5 things in the pipeline story that I found that were absolutely proving what I had said prior about getting in the process and identifying the things that fail in these agreements, in particular where no one enters in to make the statement. It's what we do in coordination with Jefferson Mining District putting a coordination thing in. We look at the law and the rules, and we look first of all whether or not those rules were complied with, because that's the law. Well, first the rules for them, for the agency, but for us it's the law. We make sure that the rule is applied by the law that was requiring it. That's the next step. And then we see if they did all their stuff administratively, and if we find any substantial failures, in other words, a failure that when you go to court, the burden on them was to prove, and the courts have required them to prove, not these little smaller things. We make a comment to those things, and we now are on record, we now have standing by that in order to say, well, when you are doing this, and you are allowing, by doing this standardized thing that you haven't listened to people with these concerns, you're allowing pipelines to break. Here's the proof. And then you go to court and you say, so the practicable standard was not for the agency just to allow this, rubber stamp it, it was to meet this problem in the future. And practicably the solution that we offered was this. No counter came. And I will tell you that position is tons more better to walk into a court and state that than to walk in and say, no, we refused, we're obstinate, we're not going to do it, we didn't produce our maps, we just relied on some conjectural statement that we made, a supposed testimony that we said, well, because we walked in and testified, that was reality, and it's our way or the highway. No, that's not the way it works. We have competing interests. And those are fleshed out by this due process that was provided. And for those that say, screw that, SCROO, screw that, you're not getting it. You're not getting it at all. You're actually an antagonist. You're supporting the war, and I'm disappointed in that attitude. And here's why. Because what I'm talking about isn't something that's an opinion. It's not something that's a guess. Oh, let's just try to do something. Every time we've done this process so far, there has not been the thing that they wanted as an outcome that went through this consensus process that's a felony against all of us, not just the Indians or the particular property owners. And where was that established? In law and in fact, in the court case of Jefferson Mining District versus Kitzhaber 2013. As I told you, I looked and said we need more foundations laid. That was our foundation laid for this point, this fact. This thing that we see coming down on us. It wasn't meant to stop pipelines, which y'all are demanding by your demands. Which is pretty, again, a self-inflicted wound. I'm just astonished at how we don't see all that. And we don't step up and make alternatives. I mean, make them, not think about them, not argue about them, not have opinions about them, because I'm into, as I now reference, I'm into so-called alternative energy or zero-point energy, whatever you want to call it. It's nonsense. There is a science about this reality that we haven't figured out that we can tap into. Whether that's called zero, whatever title you want to put onto it, when you finally figure that out and what that is, we're going to see a different type of sorts of energy. But nature is pretty stable. She's tough. Tougher than I think we appreciate. And so, until we figure out these little realities, the nature of our nature, the nature of our reality in real, not the reality that we make up in fairy tale, we're going to have a lot of trouble, a lot of fights, and a lot of division. But until then, we have to keep going. And we blame the very people that were industrious enough to bring us the things we demanded from them. I'm flabbergasted at some level. And then we fight amongst each other. And then we have this real threat that uses that against even them, against us. And we think we support that. And if you don't understand that dynamic, you don't understand how frail your thoughts and your ability to think are and how easy it is for you to be persuaded away from things that you need to do better. So I made some suggestions. Maybe I shouldn't put it in such stark terms, but I may have lost a lot of friends or maybe listeners. I don't know. Maybe people would have never listened to me anyway, but I tried to make a format. I didn't try, I did it. I absolutely made the statements that I needed to make. I cannot back up on any one of them yet. I haven't seen any evidence to be able to do that, and the process still sits there objectively. That's the reality. It just sits there. You can deny it. It still sits there to reflect how wrong you are, how hard-headed you might be. And I'm just kind of letting you know that. And if you want to be blaming me for that, shoot the messenger type thing, go ahead. I don't know what to tell you. I'm going to dodge that bullet for sure, as best I can. But go ahead, shoot away. It's just a problem for you. You're living in a contentious world. You're living in a civil war. If you look very carefully, or now you don't have to look that carefully anymore. You can see it. Not because my opinion or anybody writing about it. Go read how this thing comes out. I talk to you about it all the time. You can disprove me at any turn, and nobody will. And that's okay, because that must mean I've seen a fact. I mean, it's just a fact of the way it is. Now, do we accept the fact as a reality to work through, or do we deny it to our harm? And I can't see why you'd want to do that. It's not my decision, but I still couldn't see it, why you'd want to do that. Or more importantly, down the road, your little ones. There is a great promise here, and not anywhere. And I've explained a couple reasons why. And if people would just embrace that, that's the law. See, people don't understand. You know what law is, why it's written? Do you even get this? Do you even understand? I've said it before, and sometimes I don't say it so clearly, I guess. And then if I do say it clearly, you'll argue with me as well. Do you know what law is for? You know why you write it down? See, we're so beat down by what we call as law, we don't even know what law is, and so we fight the law. And what it is we're being beat down by people that have usurped law to make something they've invented and stuck you inside that cage. And you weren't sharp enough to see it, and not listening to me, you didn't understand how to start making record evidence of how you really weren't in the cage and what they did was a crime against you. But you know what the law actually is? It's written down, and it's written down so that it's objective. And recently they've realized they should categorize it so it's easier to find for all of us, because we're not that smart anyway. Well, we're getting really smart, but we're not getting real intelligent. We're getting smartized. We're into smartism, the technocrat's dream. Law is written down so that no one can deny it. It's there. It's published. So that we will know what that is, so it can't be changed. But more importantly, to the point, law sits there as the remembrance of the remedy for harm to you and the action to be taken by you. Where if it wasn't written down, you would have to suffer whatever came on you, whether that meant your death, it's just theft, a repeated theft of your property, or anything else. Law actually is a remedy for you. And so those people that will discount that is really a phenomenon to me. And this is, again, a part of a lack of understanding of what we did as people against ourselves and how we resolved it. This also explains the jurisdictional chasm I keep talking about. It also would explain why you can't get to the law now, because we have been put inside this other prison, this other occupation, however you want to define it. And they won't recognize law because they're criminals, as I've explained it over and over in different ways. Legalization is organized criminal monopoly by those that wield it. Listen, license is the permission to do harm, but just a little bit, as understood by the black and white to the limit of the statement of the black and white, is by definition not law because it harms something or someone. Did anybody get that? I don't think anybody gets that. When I told you long ago about the definition for the legal license to do something, and I said for most points here, this is the legal right, the sanction, and the sanction's a double-edged word. The sanction, the allowance in this regard, not the deprivation, but the sanction to do something that you otherwise can't do because it would harm something or someone. But they have determined for certain reasons, and this has a basis for it as well, that we have to understand that we also cause, that amount of harm they'll allow has been generally by society agreed to be sufficient and not truly harmful to an irreparable degree or even close. And so you allow certain things to happen. And to the limit, again, that becomes the law of the legal when they write it down and there's a limit. While all you guys that are doing legalized dope or maybe kind of dopey about it, don't quite get what they're doing there. It doesn't say that alcohol is legal. It says it's illegal, and you have to do it this way. But who has to do it that way? The commerce side, the people that want to make a profit from it. That's a whole other avenue. I don't want to bring up the rest because you all do it wrong, and then I get you in trouble, or you'll say, you'll think, well, he said it was right, and it sounded right, but I went in there, and he says the stuff, but I can't repeat it. And that's going to hurt you when you go and take my stuff and don't really do the research. You can address that. As I told you before, actually, I can't see where non-commercial cannabis was ever illegal. And I can show you that it was appurtenant to a right of the use of the land that was exclusive to you and to the exclusion of the government, even its regulations. And I've explained that. So it's not like I'm hiding anything here. I'm dropping nuggets all over the place. And I guess part of the thing is I don't want to tie things too close together, because you do take what I say, and in all your best intention, you go in and defend yourself, and then you didn't quite do it the way I was suggesting. Like, you didn't quite get enough information, which is quite a bit. I have to agree. It is quite a bit, but it was necessary. It was necessary. Can I say the word one more time? It was necessary. Do you understand the power and the value of the word necessary in all jurisdictions? You know what they do in the legal side with the word necessity? Yeah, you got to make that your friend. And then it's one necessity against the other, and then you turn to the foundation. They're doing legal, you're doing law. Where's the foundation? It's in the law. I've been trying to explain this, and just comes out this way today. Maybe that'll trigger some people's light bulbs to go on. So let me get back to the 176,000 gallons. I'm not happy about the spillage, but it's a reality. And we may have an information of that Vince was talking about maybe why. And I've offered my suggestions I've offered my observations around that suggestion on how all that gets put up in the front line. That last article tells us there's 5 more things you can throw up right in the front, that put it right on the table and say, but you're going to have to do this. And here's what we say that's going to be a practicable solution for that in the end result, in the final analysis. And that's going to stand in law on a record that we can now use. If you come up with something less, we can sue to enjoin this until you fix that problem by the standard of written, the objective basis in the legal even. This is a contention of legals, no matter how we do this as well. There's going to be some harm. To say there's no harm at all means you're living in a reality that doesn't exist. It's fairyland. All we can do is the best we can do, and we hope we're doing that. And that's been put on a competition, where if you have a better way, you better come to the table to explain it. And isn't that in a way kind of amazing that we have that to do? I mean, before, any idea didn't have a place. Now it may have a place. But we can't just take any new idea. It has to have some kind of a proof. And this is where I say we live this existence. We live in civil war. Civil is the courts. The war is the adversarial system. It's wherever you go. There's no way I can get around this. Do I live in a sense of war? Well, I live in a world that wants to war, but I want to be peaceful. And I seek the law because I know in the law, at least the land disposal law, not the new legalities, but the land disposal law, the foundation of this country, there's a peace. It's the thing the sheriff keeps. It's the thing that gave and ordained, if you will, to ourselves the law for protection. That is not law as a club, it's a remedy. And as I said that word, helping a friend of ours on an idea, I want to just mention this just briefly without too deep. Like, well, what do we do with this contamination with GMO? They've outlawed the ability to outlaw it. And I said, well, stop using the law as a club. Let's make it a remedy for people that are harmed. Again, taking the position that these laws become a club, you start getting locked into legal. And my view, for as imperfect as that might be, seems to work more peacefully to just provide remedy to people that are harmed. Not the government, to the people. I don't mean people like I'm talking to you in street language, the men and women of the country. And I'd advisedly accept Ron Steffen's awareness of this point. If I had people that we were discussing that topic together and understood this, I would probably change my language to meet those definitions, but I don't think I can do that on a broadcast. When you start understanding the people are your adversary, actually, and then when you start realizing the people are your adversary and foreign, and then I go to this land disposal law and say, but that's exclusive to the people and their foreignness. I have a power that they can't intrude, and when they do, they're a trespasser. And their legality says that they can't even violate me and harm me under color of authority to interfere with that. Think about this. The legal now becomes my tool of remedy. And then I also know I don't have the status the ultimate violation. So you see the harm shall not happen right in legality as well. But the legal is also a reflection of our societal demands. And as new things have been developed in new creations, like we just fabricate, the whole world legal is a fiction. Everything they do is a new idea, whether or not it's tangible or intangible. They've defined the intangible. That was even the intangible actual fiction, something that's just not even existent or existing, just in the notion of our minds, having literally no force and effect on its own at all ever. And that's become part of the legal system, the legal society, because the civilized society, because it's used as a tool that other people demand. And so we have a stake in that. We have ownership in that. Whether or not we want to deny it or not is a whole other thing, and I'm suggesting that we don't do that. I'm suggesting we understand what we're in and come to terms with it so we can make a better statement. That getting to the very next story I want to get to regarding the DAPL was one other article. It's interesting where you find this stuff, ancientorigins.net. And I'm not completely sold with what this article says, but he comes down to this little spot right in here, I think. Where did I have that? Excuse me. I guess I wasn't so prepared on that one, was I? I looked up and I don't see what I'm looking for. So they were talking, and they're talking from an archaeological sense, which I found was interesting. And it's someone who works in archaeology, which would be one of the main contentions that the Indians have about being disregarded, but they refuse the process. And so right there I told you that wasn't the way this game works, given it's a game. That's not how to put your best foot forward. And notwithstanding any subtleties of discussion I might have over what they were doing and the defect, they do come to the point of the tribal surveys that were done for this purpose. And it says that for DAPL, the Dakota Access Pipeline, a tribal survey was not undertaken. Now, I want to interject here. I'll try to read this next paragraph without interjection, but I want you to remember, I went to the adjudicated court record through the South Dakota, the Standing Rock Sioux suit, where they have the burden to prove their point as well, and they couldn't, it shows. When you go through the lineage of what happened, it said that they did not participate. The finding of this article is consistent with that. He says that not only they did not participate, but a tribal survey, archaeological survey, was not undertaken. This is a new piece of evidence for me to look at this. Is it an article of evidence to come in condemnation? Absolutely not. It's a failure that needs to be fixed. Until you all learn about that and fix it, nothing is going to change, and you're going to have a lot of hurt people, a lot of wasted time. Folks, I can't tell you what I think I could do with 4,000 people that got out of those fields and started to organize themselves in small groups to go after the 10 or 12 or 15 different things I've said have been needing to be stated, and and research those things and bring them to the table. I can't imagine what kind of a power you would actually become in this whole thing. And I don't mean just environmental and hearsay. I'm talking real on-the-ground stuff. Here, the tribal survey, the cultural survey, was not undertaken, means they couldn't come to the table with evidence, confirming the court's record adjudicated that there was none. That's before even not participating. I'll read the rest of the paragraph. This is only the key paragraph I'm going to focus on here. There's a lot we could talk about, but I want you to read it. I want you to see that. I want you to put your new thought on if you truly want to resolve this thing in the condition we live in. Not dismissing the system and saying that's no good. That's not going to get us anywhere. The reality is they are there. This is the stakeholder problem. They're there just 'cause. Why? Just 'cause they can affect you. And we live in a Civil War society. Lincoln proved that to us. They moved the war into the courts. Now I say move it back out of the courts and make every position in your life a legal proceeding, or the evidence to a legal proceeding. And we've done that, and when we bring the evidence early on, the malfeasant one backs off pretty quick. Astonishingly quick. Now, it may be a little bit to prove it to them, to finally get them to see the light, in which we see that a lot. But ultimately, the narrow road, the path, the law, that law sits there to protect us if we were to embrace that part. Not the legal. You really got to learn how to look for the legal, because that's not what we're looking at. Legal means permits, which means agency. So, the tribal survey was not undertaken in this article. There's some new piece of information. I'm saying fix that. Stop complaining to me. Stop calling me names or acting out or whatever the heck you did. And I'm referring to a tweet that came after last week. I don't even know what the response was to. I don't want to take it personal or nothing. But the letters capital M, F, E, R, S is not something that is going to be helpful in a conversation. Whomever you're talking about. And it was relating to my broadcast that was put out by Vince in tweeting it. And so I don't know what the response was to. It certainly couldn't have been about the information on that broadcast. Maybe it was the people that were listed in the Twitter who all got that. I don't know. But that response is not going to help. And I hope someone would appreciate that and appreciate what I'm trying to say, what will help. And if you have a question, why don't you just try what I'm saying? I've given you, I think it's a dozen or 15. I don't really keep up. Here, there's another one added on. The tribal survey wasn't actually done. It wasn't undertaken at all. In North Dakota, so if you don't have if you didn't undertake your own survey requirement, what are people talking about? I'm going to read the rest of the paragraph, I hope here. In North Dakota, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers tried to engage in consultation dozens of times, but the Standing Rock Sioux largely refused because the federal agency only wanted to consult on a narrow corridor of water crossings instead of the entire pipeline. I'm going to read the important part. Not only dozens of times, but the Standing Rock Sioux largely refused. The finding of this article is consistent with the adjudicated injunction attempt by the Standing Rock Sioux that they refused to engage. Then it gives another piece of information. I hope you listen for this stuff. I'm trying to work this out as best I can to understand and offer what I can. The Standing Rock Sioux claimed it was because of the narrow corridor of the water crossings wasn't addressing the entire pipeline. Then I'm going to tell you right there, they didn't know the process. And I'm asking you and to tell them, and them if they're listening, to take on the process. Go read NEPA, National Environmental Protection Act. It's what I have to deal with to give you some sense of actual experience. As in Jefferson Mining District, in coordination, I get to write documents that I then pass over to the assembly or the chairman to review on certain actions and plans, projects and demonstrations underneath NEPA, major federal actions that are not within the district but may affect the district. Silence, quiet, crickets, what? I can write paper to go outside the district, outside the reservation, if you will, and I can interject on something outside that will affect the district. That if you don't know the process, then your complaint is that they didn't want to consult because of the narrow corridor. You missed it. You missed it by your own ignorance of the process. And I have to stop. I start to get, I don't know what I get. I just start to get offended, insulted in the ignorance of this, that anybody would just continue to fight themselves and fight me and not engage or not come up with something and say, listen, you said this, but it wasn't. No, whatever. Get into a knowledgeable discussion. I said, I told you last week, I'm sure someone who gets into NEPA, they're going to have all kinds of stuff they know more than me. I only use what I need to because it's just too much work. And what I've found out is plenty because the agencies just can't do it most of the time. I'm almost stunned to see how much was done properly in this case. That is completely disregarded by a lot of people. I told you once, not dozens of times, give me one opportunity to come to the table. One. And why they won't let us do that is because they know they can't fulfill the demands of a grant. They know that. And I already know they know that. And they know that we know that. So I know that you know that 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 I know. And so this is what we sit here. We stare at each other with a big smile on our face because they know they're stuck. Why are they stuck? Because at the end of the process, If they didn't include what I'm saying, and it was correct and lawful, and they had the practicable obligation to show a burden beyond what we had said, we get to stop it. Now, we have to wait until that process is done, but patience is golden at this point. They can't move ahead, and they won't, actually. And in any case we've been dealing with. And so if you understood the NEPA application and you came in and said, oh, we're going to obstinately reject your offer to do this little space here, you didn't understand the process. And if you have attorneys, fire them. Did you hear me? If you have attorneys, fire them. As one guy, one of our colleagues and mine owners finally realized when they got something pushed through the county and they used the law to do it, he was astonished as to finally come to the awareness, we didn't use any lawyers to do that. And my quick response, just a natural, almost knee-jerk response is, well, you can't, why did you think you could rely on the attorneys? It can't be done, folks. It just can't be done. At least now. I would hope for better. I'm not going to condemn a whole group of people who thought they were coming in like the White Knight to protect everybody. Some do, somewhat. Some do somewhat, but not really. So, I guess I talked a lot. Got here. There's 2 more things to go on. I'm hoping people do learn this. If it's not for the Standing Rock Sioux, it's for all you property owners that got taken down. That's why I said you property owners don't actually have you're not considered a government underneath NEPA, so you have to go to your county. The county is even more formidable. Okay, so if you knew that part. The county commissioners that you vote in, though, have to understand that. And that's just a lesson that takes time, a little bit of energy, and some focus on some documentation to get that point. And once they see what their obligations and duties are, those that aren't already corrupted, and even some that are, because once you get the one that says the law, they are the majority on the commission. You teach the one what the law is and the obligation and duty of things of county concern, they now have the power. Literally the power to shut it all down. And all they do is they're a witness to the crime, but not really the crime, it's the failure of the government agency of whatever nature to fail to meet its needs and values and necessities and obligations and duties. And only the county can declare that. And they override. They may not encompass the reservation, which is actually cut away, but that affects them, what happens on the reservation. See, they get to speak to that too. So you're missing, those that don't listen to me or rail against me or have a different opinion, whatever reason, are missing some really big tools to shut things down or be fully contributory to really doing better. And in my mind, I don't see why that's a problem, even if I'm wrong ultimately. Because at some point, you already heard me say, when they come against property owners as well, right, like this, and they didn't actually use the proper law, that's a felony trespass again. So no one seems to go there, but I don't want to start people waging criminal war because they're going to find out they actually don't have a remedy because they don't have the public officials in the county to do so. No one's really operating underneath law. They're doing legal and whatever they're told by the lawyer. And you can't go to a lawyer. I'm sorry to tell you that. That's the reality. You didn't realize when you walk into their battlefield, they control it. That's not a place to go wage a war. And anybody that tries to do it that way is really a masochist at some level. So that's not what I'm saying when people try to think that's what I'm saying. As I told you in our lawsuit, we went to a court that has jurisdiction, that legal does not recognize anymore, that's still lawful, and the legal forces could not answer and did not answer, and there was a default that goes on when the party you sue doesn't answer. Pretty simple. I mean, pretty simple, folks, don't you think? I don't know why you'd have a contention about that. I don't know why that wouldn't intrigue you either. Why wouldn't it intrigue you that we did that? That even happened? I'm intrigued, and I knew to do it. Did I think something was going to step up and really destroy that? Well, yeah, I got geared up. I had my jet engines running to go to battle with 10 governmental agencies and the governments themselves. Yeah, I was ready. I got my guys around, said, okay, now watch. We're going to have to be ready for everything. They're going to flood us with a bunch of nonsense if they're going to try and answer. And we got to field all of it. Talk about stopping shotguns. Just come a-blazing. And they didn't even do that. That was my shock. I'm still stunned at that. But it worked. It worked exactly, actually, the plan. I don't even know what happened there, to tell you the truth. I just know that it was there to do, and we did it. We figured it out, and we did it. Now, if you can't take at least a major interest in that, and still talk that you want to see freedom and a better day, or even the freedom, whatever freedom you think is freedom, but being free and want to do those peaceful things. This is the war against us that you're not fighting, that they're going to win. And I just showed you how to take away all their weapons and the battlefield from them in our court case. That they still invade our land, no different than the moderate rebels that are paid for by the United States. The foreign mercenaries in that country are in our country. Now, you tell me, with all you see going on to try and stop those foreign mercenaries over there in Syria, in a democratically elected government, not regime, you see how much trouble it took a whole other couple nations to try and stop that. You tell me how little old me behind a woodshed is going to do it, or the guys, the assembly at Jefferson Mining District are going to do it by ourselves, is the problem we have here. You don't even realize that. I keep telling you, the mirror of the Middle East is the battlefield America. I just pause because I'm telling you, in the sense of me, I'm telling you some very large, immense truths here. And if you argue with me, I guess going to call you a pretender. You're just someone's wasting space. And I don't mean that as a judgment. I'm just wondering about you. I actually worry about you. And I don't mean that I'm not slighting anything at all here. I am truly worried about our awareness factor. Are we even capable, let alone dragging our feet and trying to make excuses? I get the excuses. I'm not, I'd like to see a better day. I'd like to be doing all kinds of other things. So you make the decision. You can hate me. You can disagree with me. The fact is, whatever the truth is, it's going to continue. And that truth I see is taking you all down. Keep sticking our head in that, but I still haven't made that up. I'm going to have to make myself up some behind a woodshed sand bucket so we can carry. I have to make two of them, I guess. You have to order them in pairs so we can balance them on your back across with a stick across your back. And every once in a while you can choose which bucket of sand you're going to stick your head into. So we always have a bucket of sand around to stick our head in the sand. Because that's what we're doing as a society. And a lot of us are clueless to that, especially. So they wouldn't even know, they just take on the buckets of sand. I'm going to help you out. I'll carry this for you. It's astonishing what we really don't see and what we'll excuse away. So, want to go, okay, so that was another 2 points for the Standing Rock Sioux. And if I haven't said it enough, I'm not trying to destroy what they're doing. I'm trying to embolden. I'm trying to explain where they failed. I don't like people freezing to death or having to work against it. I don't like them getting hit with water and cannons and have their arm blowed off. I don't like any of that. I don't like the oil on the ground either. But there's certain realities. There's self-inflicted wounds that we're doing to ourselves in the reality beyond that reality. For those of you that don't think I think comprehensive enough. So, what are we going to do? We're going to keep shooting the messenger here, and I'll do bullet time on you all the time until one day you come a little bit stronger and know actually what you're talking about. Maybe graze me a little bit. I'm doing bullet time here. There's no one going to shoot me. I've got that part figured out. There's going to have to be another knowledge ahead of me that gets me, that wings me. Again, it's going to wing me if it does hit me. It ain't going to kill me. But it's not going to do that to you. It's going to take you out. Because there's a denial of a reality. And then there's a false imposition of utopia and how you think, a fairy tale of how you were going to respond to that. That's almost like a shock, what do you call a shell shock? It's almost a shock to the truth. You are now incapacitated. And now that's a real problem. That's where I really have the real difficulty. Because that means you're someone who's wounded and can't provide protection for yourself. Now, on the battlefield, that's a real negative thing, and they try to do that a lot because then it takes a couple people that are actually doing the fighting that aren't wounded yet to go help that one. And so that's another method of attrition. And that's where I think I've realized I have to be very careful on who I would help. Casting pearls before swine is a real thing. The trolls, engaging the troll for any extended time that diminishes you is a real thing. It's the same type of a deal. And I will try to do what I can to bring someone along if it looks like they're interested. And as soon as I get that clue myself, a message will come to me, but just an intuitional expression will come to me that they're wasting your time. They're pulling stuff out. They're just wasting time. It doesn't matter because they're not going to change the truth. They're not going to change reality. They're just interfering with your ability to be the power that you could be to make it better for you and those around you. So moving on over to an alternative solution, which we talked about before. Two, if we really want to stop this, it's a wonderful energy source at some level, and it's got its own problems. No different than I think I feel about nuclear power. Wonderful, interesting way to boil water. And that's all we end up doing with it. So there it is. But it's cool technology. I wish we would go better on it. So we supposedly got people going better, but I don't believe that. I believe that they're on the pseudoscience, and they again, you're a heretic to make question about it. I know I've realized there's some things within atomic energy that may provide for cold fusion. And it's all based in resonance, so that would correlate with what you talk about on the dork table, or the Flash bringing on Larry Woods. That's all sits there, but that's to me more. And I still haven't conversed with Larry at all. I haven't had a chance, but again, things got the 1 week I had an opportunity. It was the week I should have done it, because since then it's been difficult. But to just converse a bit to find out the foundation of it. I don't think I'm that unknowledgeable about these more esoteric things that I can at least start to conceive whether or not I fully understand what they're saying. I can start to conceive it's going in the right direction or not. And I'm not even in that. But this is what we're doing. We're just talking. We're just working out stuff, and I see lots of mistakes being made in logic of how things work in reality in this very stable world that we live in, that I'm not sold. We can't adjust things, reframe our physical environment in order to capture things, that we're more efficiently running the energy of the universe. But I want to make sure that our time is better spent, like I do here when I'm dealing against an oppressor, whether that's against me or someone that asks me to have them help. That's a reality that you have to understand, that reality, and you have to be able to address it, find its limit, and then show where you're outside that. They should not have been able to extend out. Or they cannot extend out without being the criminal, and expose that. And that's really as simple as I'm saying it, but it takes a formal addressment. So what's the alternative to this oil that gets dripped all over the ground, and not nicely, where they just cover it up instead of actually handling it when there is a mistake, or don't inbuild the proper checks and balances? As I told you last week, we're more evidence of what those failures in the system that they said was working was. You could just bring those right up. Well, that failed. That failed, so we have to do something better to protect against that. World energy hits a turning point. Solar that's cheaper than wind. Now, okay, that's a pretty alarming headline about the cheapness of it. Emerging markets are leapfrogging the developed world thanks to cheap panels. Now, what problem with that headline, although I'm encouraged, we talked about the Saudi Arabia government gaining power for a couple dollars a watt, which is bringing it down. And in this article, they're going to show you that the solar power versus wind brings it down to 1.6. It's probably $1.65 per watt. It's 1.6 million per million watts. So I guess you do the math, if my math is correct and the new math didn't trip me. We're looking at $1.65 a watt now. It used to be $6 and $7 when I first was thinking it was cool stuff. But so we get down to 1.167, and then you go read the article, and it is coming down, and it is becoming cheaper, and it is fairly cheap compared to what my experience was back when. And I'm kind of excited about it. If you have it, why not? It's not clean, and it's not 100%. But here it is. If we wanted an alternative, instead of fighting over there in a position that you haven't presented for yourself by refusing to participate, why don't you go to the end run and say, okay, I'm going to design or promote solar panels as being the best solution, so that we can wean ourselves away from what the society has created in the need of petroleum. That's another action. You could have a whole bunch of people working on that, better than just standing out in the cold, waving a flag, and claiming that you're peaceful when in fact you haven't taken a single step to make it peaceful. And you've done it, and you haven't taken a single step that would have made it a whole lot more peaceful, and maybe actually got what you wanted. So they're touting alternative right in the news. I'm not so sold on it because I don't think it's, again, I told you, if the United States of America wanted to do that, the government would almost mandate, again, they can't force you, but they'd give you the really good reason why you should just go down to your local Home Depot and pick up your solar system that powers your entire house. Now, if you were smart, intelligent, you wouldn't have a smart meter, but you would still be hooked up to the grid because that's only partial technology. Unless you could also be given a Tesla battery that would and a sufficient power system that would charge you during the day. The battery bank from Tesla company or whoever comes up to do it in the technology they're coming to store half of the power you're going to need or a quarter of the power you need for the night to make you a self-contained system. If they really wanted to do that, if the government really wanted to help the problem of the fossil fuels, they would do that for you. Why? Because that's to us, and we help ourselves to do that, don't we? They would increase the economy because all the money you're paying now for power, especially this time of year, would be almost non-existent. You would provide for industry and all your generation powered house by house. So I don't know if it's a complete answer, but I could see that could be an answer, that if they wanted to do it, the government of the United States that prints everything out it wants just by a request on your back anyway, they could do that for us. We could do that for ourselves, but do we? Crickets. And now the price is cheaper and cheaper, so cheap that I think it's back into what I told you before. I don't think it'd been outlandish to be saying that the government of the United States could actually subsidize everybody, since you're considered to be businesses anyway. Your home is your tax home. IRS knows where you live, don't they? Yeah, they'll steal that if you don't pay your taxes because no one knows how to deal with it. So let's not worry about dealing with it. Pay your taxes, but demand what you need to demand in order to make it work for you. And now the price of solar has now come underneath wind. Wind is not an answer either. These turbines catch on fire all the time. They're very expensive and all that. I don't know if they're the answer. I don't know if I'd want to live near one myself. I think they're kind of neat. But, I mean, at some point, there's some realities, aren't there? My sensibilities get violated. I want a little protection there. You can't do it without a societally agreed plan. To me, solar seems to be a whole lot more innocuous. Even so, even if it is only 30%, I think if it's 30% effective in conversion. Doesn't matter, does it? Talk about 0-point energy. It's just the sun. That's what you're dealing with. The energy comes from the sun. I don't live in Galileo 2.0 that not even the sun exists, let alone be in the center of the universe. The sun don't exist with these people. And apparently, because the sun don't exist, you're not going to get the government to go down and allow you to pick up a solar cell panel system for your house. I mean, a complete one. A big one. And then hand you the car. I talked about all this. A $15,000 car to get you back and forth from town and back. A commuter car that you power off your own house. If they really wanted to do this, they would. We have it in us to do, but we don't. And so there's a glitch in the matrix. And you have to then understand, that there's a matrix then, because it's not happening. There's some kind of a partial solution to this problem. We might be able to reduce the amount of product that's going through pipelines. That would certainly reduce the need for pipelines, which ultimately starts to reduce the potential harm that we supply. But do we fight it there on the solution side? Do we invent the power, the energy, the real energy generators that we need? No, we don't. And then we blame it on big corporations to stifle the rest. And so, the middle ground is, then get the government to do what they agree to, which is that solar power is something green. Okay, it's green. Let's promote that. Let's all work to promote that, and we'll all have a solar panel system with a battery and a car. Why? Because that's going to be the cost of our debt and the carbon tax anyway, isn't it? So we might as well just go ahead and jump there, let the government subsidize all of us for our power, and then we diminish the need on fossil fuels. But no, we don't argue that way. We don't work to a better future. We let someone else drag us along, and then we complain about it and don't even help ourselves. So I thought that was an interesting corollary. There's a partial solution sitting that you could add for the, not really on the pipeline directly, but indirectly and into the future, the need of these things. It's going to take someone, a group of people smarter than me or more dedicated to that subject matter than me, certainly from behind the woodshed, to make that work up that solution, that alternative. And I don't see why 10 or 15 protesters out at Standing Rock Sioux couldn't be, of the thousands that are there, a group of 10 or 15 can't work together. We got all the tools on the internet, all the communications things that we got all for free, essentially. And if you can buy your phone, I suppose you have a communication style you can use within that concentrated eval can actually be used for good. Are you? I don't know. I don't think so. I don't hear the answers coming out. I hear people tuning away or calling names or whatever the heck people are doing. And so we only work on that information that we have, and we don't really think we have something to do better. We get stuck in our habits, and we become that thing that I keep telling you, the silent weapons, quiet war, says you find your place within the structure of the circuit that's been created for you, literally. They don't care where you go. They'll take you in anywhere, but it'll be for you because they don't care where you choose in the system, because that's circuit, no matter what you do with whoever they put there. When you've agreed to put yourself there, they've got you 99% already. That you're susceptible to this data garbage garbage in, garbage out condition. Forget the hacking, just the garbage in, garbage out. And we don't have the proper filters and all this other stuff, firewalls, whatever we have in this digital world, the digital concepting. That we have a big thing coming on with information. I was telling you not to get too much into the fake news. I've told you that's a crime. Fake news, in my mind, is a crime. Not even a lie, it's a crime. It's a defamation against anybody it's levied against, and I don't know why I haven't heard more of that coming out. Maybe we will. Maybe this little voice, the ripple, will finally get to people's ears, or someone will have that. It's now in the universe, if you will. Someone will tell it, will tune into that point, and people will start to make remedies for themselves, and they will start to make it so difficult on these people to continue to lie to us that eventually the pressure requires a change in some way. Now, I'm not going to even be the prophet to tell you which way, because I don't think I see enough to do anything, so it doesn't matter. But I think you can see that more concerted efforts in the proper way are going to be a lot better than just any kind of extraneous actions anywhere. A secret CIA assessment says Russia was trying to help Trump win the White House. If you haven't been tuned into the news, that seems to be the meme for this last week. The CIA and the NSA are coming together saying that Putin did it again. Putin did everything. Now I think latest is that Putin he was hacking the elections from an aircraft. It would have to have been like a dirigible, folks, because I don't think he could have stayed up that long to do much. But anyway, so this is the nonsense that's coming out. I don't really want to talk about it too much than to say this is the notice to you that the other side doesn't matter how bad they tell you the story is, to try and persuade you away from what the reality is, that you need to keep up on this. I think it's the FBI came out and said there's no evidence. They say they have no evidence, even though they make the allegations that Putin did it. We're still coming at the election here, right? Isn't it? What, tomorrow? The electors cast their ballot. All right, so we'll see. Finally, it'll be all done, this whole nonsense. But we're seeing the whole of the so-called notice to you. I call the notice. It's never been news, so it's not fake. It's real. It's just what is it? The notice that's trying to tell you. Don't look at the thing they're telling you. Look at the who or whom that's doing it as being your real adversary. I know most people sense that. I'm not trying to tell you something like, oh, it's a new revelation, but we have to stop even a draw. I don't understand why this is even a question to most of us, that we even bring it along and comment on it. The CIA assessment itself said it wasn't supportive. What have I said? You live life now under evidence. Create like you're in a trial all the time. When they didn't bring the evidence, they failed. They have the burden. It's pretty simple, actually. I think I heard a video, and I'm not sure. I thought I heard this, but I didn't have time to go back and listen to it. I was thinking, wow, he just admitted something. People call it a Freudian slip, I suppose, but it's not. I don't think it's that either. And I think I saw a Twitter as well. Last night I'm looking at the Unqualified one making a statement about this situation, and he said something about well, there's nothing that Putin doesn't know. And I twittered out, well, that's not answering whether or not he has evidence that Putin did it, or Russia did it. In fact, if he has no evidence, it means that very likely that Putin had no knowledge and didn't do anything, isn't it? But he doesn't address the point. He goes that, but he says, I think he said something about, he referenced the leakers. The problem was that the subject matter of Russia is hackers. And so very interesting what's going on. The point is that there is no proof to substantiate the first claim, let alone a follow-up that does so, given the opportunity. And you have to I want you to understand that that's what's going on here. When you engage in these things, even as a real debate, even, where we see exclusive ex-British ambassador, who is now a WikiLeaks operative, claims Russia did not provide Clinton emails. They were handed over to him at a D.C. park by an intermediary for disgusted Democratic whistleblowers. That implies leaker, which was what Obama, I thought he said, and I could be wrong. I didn't have time. I wish I could go back to, right before my broadcast the night before, I'm going through a ton of stuff to see if I can fulfill the things I have in my mind to do. And I try to listen close, but it could be I made a mistake. I thought he made a difference. But that would suggest that this is correct as well. But it doesn't matter. You've got a government that's lying to you. You have a government that's not producing the proof. You have a government that does that in your courts. They do that in your agencies. They do that in their regulations. They do that in their legislations. We have to come to terms with that. We can't just blow this thing off. Now, a lot of you will say, forget that. But I don't know that that's a viable answer. Because as these people continue to lie and substantiate themselves with lies, you just start living the lie of their crime. I've told you a long time ago, you are actually the accessory to the crime against you. It's that ring in your nose. It's funny I don't say some of these things and all of a sudden they come back again, I've got to say them again. I've said these things for years and years. I mean, in a way I am a broken record, and my perception is I've been pretty good to hide the skip in the record. I tell you all this stuff through different ways every week. I try to find different ways to tell you the same stuff. And I'm repeating the same principle. So I'm hoping that underlying the principle that you keep repeating here is the point. Now, maybe I have to rethink that strategy, because it doesn't seem like many people really roll their sleeves up. There are a few, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. I'm getting a little bit more critical, though, of people that are like they unbutton their cuff and claim to be rolling up their sleeve, and when in actuality they've really given up or pretend or whatever. It just doesn't fulfill what's needed. That these people that are the psychopaths, this caucustocracy that rules you, this battlefield America, looking for every way the technocrats want to get into your future, your life, and your sons and daughters' future in life. These people that will make fake news. I now understand that the so-called fake news is going to be used by Facebook, is going to be controlled by reference to, oh darn it, what's the, I can't remember the name. It starts with an S, I think. Excuse me. It's funny how lately I got so much going on. These words are not following in my mind. Anyway, there's a, and I understand now it's a liberal website that you can check against. We've been found out behind which I've shown that it was a lie. That they can't really be trusted either. And then we find out apparently, and I don't know, this is just stories, Soros is backing this thing up. So you see the system is setting up anybody who sit themselves inside this what they call media or fake media or anything is going to be a target. It's going to be a target by the system that's got the system. And you're going to be on the outs generally. If you're not, that's why I say you can't make that a battle. You have to just make it a recognition. These people are going to win that point. And that's why I say call it out. It's not fake news. It's literally a crime. It's a defamation. It's something wrong. You call it out for the wrong that it is. If you don't, they continue to have authority to say it. They continue to use their own system in order to persuade others into just believing what they read and what they hear. And that keeps continuing to be divisive against us. To where this starts to go, where you see the technocratic fold, the motive and the end point coming, we now have this week, Congress hands governmental authority to microchip people with mental disabilities. Congress hands government authority to microchip people with mental disabilities. Now, we've talked a little bit about this coming, and here it is, folks. It's I don't know what to say about it. It's beyond abstraction. It's beyond thinking, just opinions, or just what I don't even like the word conspiracy theory. Just beyond. It's almost beyond. What is it? Dick Tracy and his communication watch here. I mean, this is what we've been looking at. But in the last few years, we've reported on this, and here are these things. Remember, the important point here, first of all, is Congress is going to impose itself through the local authority onto people. And they're going to claim they're doing good for them. It's their interest. The people with dementia, the people with Alzheimer's, the people that are mentally disabled by some neurological condition. Remember what we talked about here. I was bringing this stuff up. I've been bringing all of this up. They inject you with things that affect you, that causes these so-called mental disabilities that whom is going to define but the system itself, the psychiatrists that are probably the worst malfactors and disordered people, malordered people. They make up, the same way they make up all this other stuff. They make up disabilities for you. Once they get this in, don't think that your thought the heretic that they'll call you in any subject matter will be enough to put you underneath this mental disability condition. And I wouldn't doubt it right off the bat. They're going to go right after all you cannabis criminals. Remember, they're telegraphing that with the guns. Don't underestimate this connection ahead of time. But these people, this caucustocracy you've allowed to maintain their position and allow them to maintain how long they do this and all this nonsense that goes on, is coming to the day when they're writing laws that they can interfere with your abilities to do much of anything, and they will be able to control you by how they describe you. And if you're not capable of defending yourself, or you don't, what they call you sticks. And I guess there's a lot of people that say, let them come and take me, and then that'll end that right there, and that's fine for those points, but that's not going to fix it for anybody else. Everyone else is going to be suffering all this thing, and you're going to watch people around you just being destroyed. I don't know what more to say. Like I said, I don't even want to read these stories. They're really disappointing. They talk about this, and no, you haven't entered the twilight zone. This actually happened in real life. All right? So it's beyond fairy tales or story or sci-fi. This is really going on. All the denial they were doing about chipping people, they're doing it now. They're doing it on a fabricated status called mental disability, which they are defining. And they have allowed themselves to give their decision because you didn't step up and say, wait, you're just making this stuff up. And I just quickly noticed, I was hoping maybe somebody in the chat room about the organization that they just put this over to at Facebook, but Rob Works. I think I've heard the name a long while back actually, but I don't have any information that comes to me while I'm broadcasting, so we'll just maybe have to touch base with you on that later. But microchipping mentally disabled, and you understood, and we heard I reported a little bit to psychiatrists. The book of mental disability is expanding. If you breathe, you have a mental disability, no different than the carbon. If you exist, you have a carbon footprint. You're going to have a mental footprint, a status that can attach to you. So I don't know, and there's really no limit. We see also the problem with, I see now a problem with ICANN. This is one of the problems that the bear of the week was domain registration and stuff. They've changed a lot of the rules and really interfered this week. And I realize as I'm looking at this and how this all works, what used to be just a couple of agreements you entered into now are dozens and dozens and dozens of agreements that now have gone international, and they do not recognize your rights in the States at all. Whether it's intellectual property, whether it's whatever, free speech, whatever. They don't recognize it. They claim it as their property, what you've invented, essentially. What you've paid for, what you caused to come into being. And then they stick you underneath arbitration agreements, which, as I read real quickly, are really only applicable to domain challenges and not their action to steal away or cause you to cause more costs and more regulation. That the local law actually rules. So there you are back to your law, and you better understand that part. So this digital world, I can see technocracy knocking at the door in just a domain registration situation. how they control what goes on, and that you will pay or you will lose. And they will take and they will make and profit. Now just I hope maybe they let that sink in just a little bit. The evidence, the notice to us of the condition of the future is right around us. It's not that hard to see. And so this mental disabilities, I just don't even know how to express. I really don't really have words to express. This is beyond evil. It's evil. I don't even know what to say about it. There's not an adjective I can put on it. If you don't understand the problem that someone defines what a mental disability is and can chip you and then follow you, and then you see the rudiments of the plan already coming out there's a video on the internet, and they already have the plan. The cops are already implementing this in places or getting ready to, and they tell us that in some of the programs they're going to chip you, and they got to come back every 30 days to give you the new battery. Okay? So they're going to be in your life every 30 days. If you haven't figured out how community care starts to work. I've talked about all of this. It's almost, if I think about that too much, and I don't even know why, because I don't know, I'm not going to probably see too much of this, and if I do, it'll be over pretty quick. I'm just terrorized. I'm terrorized for you all. I'm terrorized to see I guess I'm disappointed. We really can go to a great place in evidence of what we were given to start from, the starting point for us. But what we're losing in all this, and just a few people that are doing it, really is a big disappointment. But it's a bit of a terrorism, and I guess I'm speaking through my mind, where I'm aware, and I have cognition for it. It may not be so bad for those of you that make it on and don't have that ability. Maybe it is that you'll be the docile sheep that we talk about. And that's the danger I feel for you, because as I tell you, you're clueless now. You're going to be the ones, for as much, even the clueless resistor is going to be one of these disabilities, and you'll be chipped anyway. And you won't have a clue on how to do what I've been trying to tell you that allows you a big measure of defense before they can get after you. And if you have a whole lot of people, that's where that starts to really kick in. I mean, again, as I said that, I just can't imagine what I could do with all the thousands and thousands of people that went to Standing Rock and did it wrong, to help them to do it right. And I've given them all that information, so they don't even need me no more, but there it is. And I don't see it happening. They won't, but I don't see I see some acknowledgments, I see words changing, but I don't see the force and effect of their power. So this term mental disabilities is one of the watchword legalities that if you don't understand how, and they make it very difficult. It used to be when you went in to fight stuff in the courts, they'd say you were mentally defective, and they'd stick you in a hold, and they'd give their psychiatrist, and then the psychiatrist was come back, and at least at that time they were honest enough to say, no, that guy's totally sane. Well, that was just a diversion for you to go away, and they bring you back in. They found out you're totally okay, and then they do with you what they will. But that was the first hints that they will just a judge, so-called, a bar member, a plunderer, a criminal, just defames you and declares you to be some status, and that's sufficient to take away everything in your life. And you allowed it because you didn't fight it now. And what do I do? You say, what do I do? Well, you at least engage, roll up your sleeves, and maybe help the Indians. Maybe help yourself, help your neighbor. Figure out how, understand the road laws, understand land law. Start go down and talk to your county about how they're violating the taxes. So maybe you don't have to pay the taxes because they screwed up and they thought they were getting away. They didn't know they were getting away with something that was a crime. I just said that 2 weeks ago, a week ago. We just did that. We got a record now. I just heard the letter. They acknowledged that they put land use laws on a disposed patent, and they have no power to do that. If they have no power to do that and they're the legal system, I've just explained the chasm again, exactly what we know exists, and while we make sure we keep everything on the side of the property versus the legal, the law versus the legal, the law of the land versus the legal, and the law of the land surpasses and prevails against the legal, that is evidence again. Did we do it through the courts? Can I laugh? Well, no, it's a serious thing, but what a joke. If you think we're using the courts against themselves, please. We're using the system to beat it. No, we're taking the law and we're showing that the system that's come up is a criminal. No, we don't call them criminals. We just say, you got to do better. They'll whine that you're calling them a criminal, and you say, no, I'm just wanting you to follow the law right here. That gives you the second opportunity to point it out. And if you do that right before the guy that has the seat of decision or the woman that sits in the seat of decision in the county, well, there it is. You got your proof. If that one's following the law of the land, that gives you remedy, protection, security, the real security, like it says in the Declaration of Independence. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, which we know is property. Hernando de Soto, Peruvian economist who went to train in Geneva, said the greatest thing about the West, the United States of America West, was its system of records and the judiciary and the judicial system that keeps the law to protect those system of records that evidence the property to be protected. That's nowhere else in the world, if you don't quite get this. That's been destroyed, and we allowed it, that we can stop it. So this not technocratic imposition, this silent weapons, quiet wars, plug us in. If you don't plug yourself in, they'll plug you in. If you don't know how to try to keep yourself unplugged as well, they'll give you all the free stuff so they can become root, what they call root. They'll root you all right. And you become just the user, you user. And they take the host position, you parasite, user. It's all around us, folks. Coming soon, IRS scanning cars that talk to traffic signals. Now, this is exactly what I was telling you before. But one time, long years ago, I saw on one web page ads of the new technology coming out, and I put together, eventually I created the dialogue to say, as I've told you before, that it's coming down through some mechanism, some device. You will be crossing an intersection. Let's say, just make it easy, you were going through and you went through a red light. Before you reach the crosswalk on the other side, you would be receiving a receipt in your phone that said, thank you for doing business with the city. Here's your debited value that you owe us in fines from your bank account. And then I've added a few months later that if you didn't have the funds in your account, it was all tied together that they could take from, you probably wouldn't survive to the crosswalk because they would drone your tail before you reached it, because you didn't pay your debt to society. Coming soon, iris scanning cars that talk to traffic lights. I don't have to read more. If you aren't getting this, did I predict the future? Well, no, I just read the law and told you and watched the inventions coming and what the government did around that. So I predicted the future till today, but it wasn't predicted. It was actually just agreeing in the battlefield that this is the weapons against us. It's here today. It's not. We're way beyond sci-fi here, folks. Way beyond us, and they're moving so much faster. And so, how do you get involved in that system? Well, they all presume you to be doing commerce, don't they? And they know that because of your license plate on your car, don't they? Or the evidence of the application of the state law, motor vehicle code that you signed by your application into the state. The evidence of that application is the license. That's not your license, the license. The thing you think that you hand to the cop, that's evidence that they can apply the commercial code to you. And you hand it to them. And the plunder is when you tell them that you have a right because you go to the road law and you have a granted right underneath that, then they beat you up. That's the crime. I just wish a lot of people would see this and figure out they don't need to get beat up, but I mean, they need to set that record and start to press to get the people that are in seats of decision locally have to start recognizing the law again. Going on, the people that make these decisions, the seats of decision that make the decision, the administrative thing, again, commerce is all administrative, motor vehicle division. They're getting all this infrastructure built in up around us. They're going to have the Congress. I don't even know how they have authority to do this, but now they can treat mentally disabled people. That must be a commerce activity, folks. And then we wonder why we're all going to dementia or Alzheimer's. It's all planned, folks. They're all going to get you. But when you hit 35, you're going to be, I told you, when you hit 46, you're already elderly. By the time you hit 35, you'll be probably have provided all that they can extract normally from you because they got more, making more behind you. They got more chips coming. Make another bag of Lays. I mean, they don't need you after 35. They've sucked all the energy out. That's the prime of your life gone. Downhill from there. Oh, they got a mental disability. They're elderly. Give them a chip. Follow them around. We got to extract a little bit more before they die. We got to do a little quicker. You got to have the cops showing up in your face every 30 days. And for those of you that thought legalization was the answer, and I kind of told you, watch out, don't think that way. New DEA rule. Where were you here about making a comment against this one? But here they are. The new DEA rule says CBD oil is really, truly, no joke, illegal. This is an interesting article because there's been a discussion that the word cannabis is not in the law. It's marijuana, and that's specific, and we can go to that maxim that says what's not included is excluded. We can do that, but I can tell you that's going to be a little bit harder fight. I'm not saying to abandon it. I'm saying be aware that that's going to be the objection to your insertion. The United States United States Drug Enforcement Administration, Enforcement Administration made CBD oil a little more federally illegal in a little noticed bureaucratic maneuver this morning. So I'm just going to leave it right there. You have a way to jump in on that. Those of you that are the hordes and hordes of cannabis users have a bunch of letters you all can send down in there and flood those people and say, wait a minute, you made a rule without doing the process. And it affects us all, and it's over $100,000 or $100 million, whatever the heck it is, whatever the standard of the agency. You just go in there and talk about them, and you get that thing destroyed. You go in and join that rule until they come back and they make the proper rule. One of which is they use the term marijuana extract and they spell it with an H, but marijuana, notably, contrary to actually stating cannabis. The rule the agency extends it to cannabis. If you read the article, you'll have enough information in this to say, wow, they are just jumping outside the law, and then you need to go research and see if a court anywhere has lawfully determined that cannabis or cannabinoid is under marijuana with the specificity of the language. They actually say that the rule goes into the cannabinoids, which does include the CBD. The thing I find interesting is there any studies on CBD at all? And if they did that, how are they able to outlaw it if they have the burden, and you have to go in there and tell them this, that they had the burden to find that there was no medical use available, and then you bring your evidence of millennia of use for marijuana utilizing the CBD oil in its natural form as a health thing, as a right in your property to grow for your exclusive use of your property, not in commerce. So I'm just throwing stuff out there. This article is very interesting. They include the cannabinoids. They also say that they haven't argued that themselves as an agency that it's right. And I look at that and say, well, that means it must be wrong. Because they can only do as an agency, they can only do what they've been delegated. Even the Congress can only do what it's delegated. The legislative branch only can do what it's delegated. The judicial branch, only what it's delegated. It's delegations of authority because you're dealing not in people that are bureaucrats, but for the most part, there's a fiduciary duty that they have to meet. So new DE rule says CBD oil is really, truly no joke, illegal. I don't know why I didn't hear you all telling me all the letters you wrote. Crickets, folks. We just do this to ourselves. And I want to remind you, I told you when I saw some states' laws, I took exceptional note to the fact that extracts typically are illegal. They're not legalized. They were excluded from the legalization. And I said that was because they already know pharma is in on these bills, and there is a CBD oil use, if not a cannabis, the THC use, but the CBD oil is where the money's going to be. They didn't legalize that part. I told you that. And here it is, the rule that backs that up. I suppose I believe it's with the eyes to see. It's not just an opinion, oh, they're going to do this. No, this is a methodology. And they're beating us at every shot, every one. They take the shots. We're standing there flat-footed. And they're taking us out, left and right. Whoever they is, I don't know. I think it's the industry behind with the government and the attorneys have figured all this out. And I'm going to suggest then, you have to be very careful as a recreational user, because it's still, the focus is on medical for the properness of this. Be careful that you're growing recreationally. I really would suggest that you figure out, I don't know how you're going to do it, because as soon as you get that medical registration, they're going to call you a mental deficient, someone who's not capable of protecting yourself under the Second Amendment. So you have to go fight that one first and prove that out wrong. So we're really getting behind the 8 ball on this one. And I guess I just got to call it out to you. Maybe most people just shrug their shoulders and that's it. I don't know, but I see thousands of us doing nothing. I see thousands and thousands of Indians not doing the right thing. They don't even need thousands and thousands to do the right thing. They can take some of those people and do the right thing in a different area, like this. Someone needs to pull a lot of people together and have them drop their buckets of sand and pull their heads out. I mean, I just wish I could just stop talking and know that would happen, but I don't know why I got to keep coming back every week to say this. The control is everywhere. You can't even not act and you're going to get into something. Blogger jailed for refusing to erase stories he wrote exposing a powerful political family. Blogger jailed for refusing to erase stories he wrote exposing a powerful political family. I thought just recently they said if you don't offer your password, they actually can't get into your computer. So the other thing they have to do is, under the supposed rule of law for evidence, they have to confiscate your computer and try to get in the other way, because they can't force you to do something, and there's no authority to force you to not do something. And yet here we have the turn. This bar association member has now made it, if you don't act, you're found in contempt, and there's not much defense against that style of a action, notwithstanding what you claim is your rights. And this is a journalist apparently in his area that they did this too. So if you're not putting your mind in the frame that you're in a war battlefield, literally, and these are the agents against, these are the soldiers against you, all these things, notwithstanding what you think you have as rights, you're not going to prevail. You're not, and when you try to, you're going to do the wrong answers, the wrong thing. You won't have the proper record made. You really, despite what boldness you think you want to do, I'm no less bold in what my final result will be, but I'm certainly more cognizant of my actions to get there, that they don't tie me up, that I don't do something that ties me up with the reality of what we're up against. Again, all these stories are too fast for me to keep and do analyses. I can't offer suggestions on some of these, all of them. I had some ideas, but it's been a little while now to come to this. But to tell you today, so I'm a little fuzzy, if you will, on all the things that are in this story as well. We're like, there's just no foundation in this regard. And if you don't understand that dynamic, I mean, really, I just don't know what to do. I mean, the forces that be will be forces against you, and there will not be peace. They will do under the necessity I was talking about earlier. Venezuela institutes forced labor, orders citizens to do farm work. If you don't think that might be happening, look at what's happening when they go against a currency in a country. I mean, all it takes is these rules and some people that are willing to follow up, to enforce the rule, as you see they're doing at Standing Rock, to abuse you. You can't deny that's the reality we live, because you're watching it. And if you don't understand that and accept that, not because you're an unpeaceful and unwarring spirit, but that there's a reality that this unwarring spirit has to survive in, and better than just keeping quiet and being a cricket. And that's not my discussion. That's not my decision. I really would like a better day. I mean, my spirit's a whole lot more carefree than what I've been dealing with in the last 10 years. So thank you very much for tuning in today. Hope something I said helps a little bit, gets us into the more proper thought. Thank you, Grimner, for all you do and providing the space and the system and keeping it going. RealLibertyMedia.com. And thank you again, Grammy Mary, for the donations to the Spreaker account, which gets us another thing. And there are all kinds of places we are, and I don't remember them. I apologize to all the people that are supporting all that. There's RLMXYZ and what I don't remember, the names don't come to me. SoundCloud, and there's internet.hash radio, dash radio, UCY.tv. Again, Jules, thank you for broadcasting simulcast and the pastcast and the prodcast, however Vince wants to call it, when he helps me out putting up his the YouTube account as well. It's all over, and I thank you for all that help for me, because it's just kind of way beyond keeping up. We just need people helping people, putting together the right stuff. And then all you terrestrial broadcasters, again, thank you very much. As we do, folks, donate where you can, support whatever you got to support something, either if it's non-support, you're supporting whatever you're supporting. So if you have a way, donate if you can to the people that cause the ability for me, my words to get out, and others. Now stepping up, I understand there's other people stepping up to just bring their voice forward and and their ideas. So I hope somebody can get something out of this. Thank you again. I'll be here next week, tech diffs or nature willing.